49ers Web Zone No Huddle podcast. We are back with another episode only on the Odyssey Network. We got Sacco, we got Zain, Brian's on assignment, and man, Al, there's only one word to describe this whole quarterback saga, this whole Trey Lance saga, and it's just bizarre. The most bizarre thing I've ever seen. It's I can't remember a time where a team has been so scrutinized over a backup quarterback battle. And it's not media's finest hour. It's not this fan base's finest hour by any means.
It's been an ugly week, and it's gotten a little bit uglier than I think it's needed to. But I found myself just really thinking about this. Number one, why is it such a big story? Well, it's such a big story because the 49ers gave up more than maybe they ever have and made maybe their most aggressive trade ever to go up and get this kid, Trey Lance. That's why I think that it's such a big story, because 3 years later, we are where we are. But did you see the interview with Joe Banner? Did you happen to see what he said?
I did. But
Okay.
you should recap
So
it for our listeners.
Yeah, the listeners who may not have heard it, Joe Banner is a longtime league exec who's worked with Kyle Shanahan in the past. And he did an interview, and I forget who he did the interview with, but he said that Kyle is smart, if not smarter than any offensive coach he's ever worked with. But he went on to say, and I quote, but he's a very emotional guy and tends to be a fairly short-term thinker. And once you get in his doghouse, it's really hard to get out. But knowing the way Kyle is wired, it's really hard for me to picture how they can ever get back to a good, positive place supporting each other, meaning him and Lance. So that leaves me with kind of a simplistic that if they can find another place, end quote. And he went on to say that when Kyle's down on a player, it's hard for him to get back into an objective place about it. And we've seen him come out of that with Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk seemed to be in the doghouse, and then he came out of it. But we've also seen with Jimmy Garoppolo, where it seemed like it was a frosty relationship for a while. And we heard recently that, I believe it was Tim Kawakami, might have been somewhere else, but talked about what the relationship was at the end of last season when they weren't even getting back to each other. And we've seen how Kyle can be impatient with quarterbacks. So how did we get to this Trey Lance situation? Well, let's look back. And I think it starts in 2020. And when you look at that season, they're coming off a Super Bowl appearance. There's big expectations. But Jimmy misses multiple games, and I think he only played 8 games that year. And there seemed to be some differences between how severe the team thought Garoppolo's injuries were and maybe what Jimmy's camp did. So that season, Kyle goes 6-10, clearly frustrated to the point where they spent the entire offseason looking for a quarterback in 2021. They started out heavy on Stafford, and they ended up losing out on him to the Rams. They kicked the tires on guys like Carson Wentz and Sam Darnold, and then they ended up getting heavily involved with Deshaun Watson before his legal troubles come up. Very shortly after those legal troubles come up, they pivot quickly, and they put together a trade deal that was probably prepared for Watson to trade up in the draft to number 3. Now, who were your options at number 3? Mac Jones, who I don't think had the talent to ever be worth number 3 overall pick. Justin Fields. So, Zain, people will say like, oh, we could have had Justin Fields. Justin Fields would drive Kyle Shanahan crazy. He hasn't been a good thrower of the football. I don't think Fields would have been a good fit here either at all. I think he would have definitely lost his patience with him as well. And then you have Trey Lance. And what I think happened here is I think that the Niners panicked. I think when they didn't get Stafford and they didn't get Watson, I believe they panicked. They even tried to get Aaron Rodgers before the draft. I'm not sure they really knew what they were doing. They just know that they wanted to trade up. So what did they do? They trade up for maybe the most inexperienced quarterback that we've ever seen come out of college. Lance in college had 16 attempts or less 8 times. He had 18 to 23 attempts 7 times and only 30 plus twice. And one of those 30 plus attempts games was the one game he played in 2020, because he didn't play for basically an entire year because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And then his NFL attempts are only 1, 18, 29, 23, 28, and 3. So you bring in this inexperienced quarterback, and we were all drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Can he start in week 1? Can he be that good? And when you look back at it, the kid was a project, man. he probably had no business playing at that time and probably had no business going to a Super Bowl ready team unless the plan was, hey, just sit and learn. You're going to be here for 2 years and then worry about it. We don't even need you on the field right now. But 2021 was just like a snowball going downhill, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. He hurts his finger in the preseason game, which was apparently a very serious injury that affected him for a while. But he's still getting reps in certain packages. And he got a start against the Cardinals, and he was clunky in that game. They lost 17-10. Lance looked clunky, which has been a theme for him. But then he gets hurt again, this time his knee. So he's hurt his finger, he's hurt his knee. He's barely played and already has 2 significant injuries. But there's also some discord in the locker room that Kyle was using him in certain packages and undermining Jimmy. And they kind of asked Kyle to back off. From what I understand is some of the players were like, hey, let's let Jimmy get the reins. And they did, and they played a lot better. That season, Trey gets one more start. They win 23-7 over Houston. And I didn't think he played well in the first half, but I certainly thought he bounced back and played pretty well in the second half. And whatever he did enough to show that he could be the starter in 2022. So you go to 2022, and he is the unquestioned starter, right? It's his team. But if you really watch what was going on in that 5 quarters, it didn't seem like Kyle really trusted him to throw. He was using him as a runner. Now, the thing with Lance, and this was a big misstep by the 49ers, Trey Lance may be athletic. He is not a good runner. In no world is Trey Lance the kind of runner that Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts is. He's clunky, again, clunky runner, clunky passer, and he stumbles into contact. Because he stumbles into contact and doesn't protect himself, he leaves himself open to injuries. Now, you can get mad at Kyle's play calling. I didn't love it all the time. And it's not that I didn't love it because he was running Lance. I didn't love it because when you look at Lance run, it doesn't look like you can watch him run and think, oh my God, this guy's going to kill himself. He's stumbling into a linebacker. But they kept running him, and sure enough, it happened. Jimmy comes back. Jimmy gets hurt because that's what Jimmy does. And then Brock Purdy happens. And all of a sudden, you have this guy coming in, and he's running the offense Kyle wants. He's an extension of Kyle on the field. The Niners are scoring a ton of points. And if he doesn't get hurt in the NFC Championship game, who knows? But he did enough in those games to tell Kyle Shanahan, whether you agree with it or not, this is our starting quarterback. So now where is Lance? The offseason, what did the 49ers actions tell you this offseason? They told you that not only do they not trust Lance to be the starter, they don't know if they trust him to be the backup. Because if they trusted him to be the starter, they would say, yeah, Purdy's got the lead, but listen, Trey was our starter last year. He can overtake him. Nope. I don't think that was on the table. And they signed Sam Darnold in day one of free agency, someone who, like we talked about, Kyle has really liked, to ultimately compete with the QB that you traded multiple first-round picks for, mortgaged your future for. You're bringing him in to compete for the backup job. They didn't give him an opportunity. But it sounded like he was having a better camp and there was improvement. Now, I'm not there. I can only go from what people say. And they said he was playing better from what I was told. And I went on this show last week and I defended Lance. I said, the kid's 23. He doesn't have any experience. He needs to get reps. You still need to see what you have there. I agree Purdy should be QB1. I'm in that camp. But you got to give Lance reps. Give him a chance to at least be the number 2 here. But then when he comes out and plays in the preseason game, it wasn't all awful. There were some good reps, but there were some reps to me where he looked non-functional in a way that I don't think you can play him right now. And again, all his reps were not bad, but if the Niners have to play the Steelers tomorrow and Purdy's not available, I don't think there's any way you could put Trey Lance out there right now, not based on what we saw last game. Now, does that mean he's not going to come out this week against the Broncos and play really well? No, he could come out and play really well. That could happen, and we could be having a different narrative. But right now, it looks like this was a bad pick by the 49ers. Lance has not had the opportunity to sit and learn and get reps. And it doesn't seem like Kyle Shanahan gives a shit. Now, go back to what we said earlier in the show about what Joe Banner said. He thinks short term. He doesn't think long term, and he doesn't have patience. All of that fills in. And I think that's where we are with Lance. Fair or not, and people feel a lot of different ways, but Zain, this is like, that's my short version of the 30 for 30 on Trey Lance. It's just been a crazy, crazy ride.
So whose fault is this? Is it Kyle? Is it John Lynch? Is it Trey? Who bears the brunt for this?
Well, I think that people don't want to criticize Lynch and Shanahan because they've had so much success, and they have. And I've said this before, they've done a lot of things right. A lot of things right. They should in no way have their jobs in jeopardy or anything like that. But even people who are good at a lot of things aren't good at other things. Nobody's perfect, and they have not been good at quarterback evaluations or getting a quarterback for this team to this point. From where it started, the initial season, you did not have a quarterback, and you said, hey, we're going to run with Brian Hoyer and Matt Barkley and wait for Kirk Cousins when you had really generational talents in Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. Even though Watson had legal troubles, we didn't know that then. They were two very generational talents at quarterbacks you passed for Cousins, who you didn't even end up getting because you traded for Garoppolo and maybe jumped a little bit to give him that contract. Fine. We were, again, in hindsight, we were all on board, whatever. But then after 2019, Tom Brady's knocking on your door. They didn't answer, or they did and said, go away. That was a misstep there. They decided to stay with Jimmy, and then the next year they're out on Jimmy. So if you decide to stay with Jimmy and he was there for 3 or 4 years and they were behind him for 3 or 4 years, but it seemed like they were a year later, they were ready to replace him again. And then it was a soap opera with Garoppolo. People can call it what they want to. That was a soap opera. Jimmy himself said it was awkward. So they did not handle that well. And then if they did panic in 2021 offseason and took a quarterback who, again, had no business coming in and being the quarterback of a Super Bowl ready team yet. None. And you can say, well, they found Brock Purdy. No, they stumbled onto Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy kind of saved their ass. If Brock Purdy doesn't happen, I don't know, is Kirk Cousins your quarterback right now? I don't know. And it's not reality, so we don't have to get into that. It's fine. But yeah, I think it's Lance. I know he hasn't had the reps, but he's also, again, there's some things that look like basic stuff he wasn't doing. Not every play, but some plays. So Lance, I think, has been a disappointment in that regard. But yeah, Lynch and Shanahan made a bad pick. They made a bad trade. That's what it appears to be right now. And if Purdy wins a Super Bowl, whatever. It'll be a footnote. But if he doesn't, or there's a new quarterback here next year, because Purdy doesn't work out, because we still don't know what Purdy is. It could be a bigger thing. So, we'll see. But I think if you look at it and say Shanahan and Lynch did a good job with this, take off your red and gold glasses. They didn't. They didn't. And that's fine, because they've done a good job with a lot of other things, but they did not do a good job in this scenario.
So if Brock Purdy never emerged last year, hypothetically, what would they have done? What was your plan if Jimmy was gone? We knew that. Trey was coming off of a broken ankle, a major injury, and you see the result now. This is what you would have seen, minus Brock Purdy being on the roster. So what would they have done if Brock Purdy didn't emerge last year in those last 5 regular season games and those 2 playoff games? Well, 3 playoff games. But my point here is that at every step of the way, they have failed to address the most important position in sports the right way. And people will be like, well, Zain, how can you say what way is the right way? They know more than you. Look, just because they're in that position of making the decision doesn't mean that they always make the right decision. And this is clearly a decision that was not the right decision. It was a desperation play. They keep circling back to the same sort of thing that they would have had happen anyways. They wanted to get rid of Jimmy after 2020. They drafted Trey, and Jimmy ended up starting anyways. They wanted to get rid of Jimmy last year. They didn't feel like Trey was ready. He started anyways. Finally got rid of him this year, and you aren't starting Trey. So it's like, really, the whole justification for bringing Trey Lance in was that he would eventually get a shot at the starting job and be able to play. I think it's horrible luck that he ended up breaking his ankle in his second start and never got anything beyond that. I think it's horrible luck because we don't know what would have happened. But to me, sure. Al, and you know me, like I was and still am as pro Jimmy Garoppolo as anybody, right? But the mistake that they made was not starting him after they drafted him. That was the year to find out what Trey Lance actually, all right, cool. Can you handle this or not? And it takes more than 1 year, but that was the year to really establish him and start building your roster around him and seeing what he can do and seeing his limitations and all that stuff. They chose to go with the safe play. They started Jimmy over Trey. They had a plan in their minds, and it didn't work out. And it feels like every time this team tries to get I don't like this phrase, but too cute, it doesn't work out for them. They try to get too cute with the Buckner trade and replace him with Kinlaw. Be like, oh, well, we replaced him with the first round. That's worked out horribly. Another one of the worst first round picks that this franchise has ever had. Okay. They try to get cute in 2017 when Kyle first started and draft Solomon Thomas instead of Mahomes and Watson, who were sitting right there in their lap, and it bit him in the ass. They try to get cute when they were waiting for Kirk Cousins, didn't get him. They ended up with Jimmy instead. They try to get cute and try to win with Jimmy instead of making the smart play and signing Tom Brady for a year, bit him in the ass. Try to get cute and desperate and trade for Trey and be like, okay, cool, he'll sit 2 years on the bench behind Jimmy. Didn't work out. Look, that's not all their fault because Trey got hurt. But the problem is that when there's a clear path for a solution in front of them, they don't take it. They get cute. And that is, I don't know if that's a Kyle thing. I don't know if it's a John Lynch thing. I don't know if it's a Parag thing. I don't know who is the person that is behind pulling the strings for these decisions, or if it's a collaborative group failure. But it's a colossal failure. And it's mitigated by the fact that they have a capable starting quarterback, or seemingly capable starting quarterback. We've yet to see a full season out of Brock and what he can do. But based off of the small sample size we saw, it feels like you're getting a step up from what Jimmy Garoppolo provided you. I think it's safe to say that, because he provided you equal or better production out of a much less experienced player. So that much we do know. The part that we don't know is that, number one, can Brock hold up for a whole season? And number two, can he maintain what he started last year? I expect some sort of a regression, because obviously he'll lose a game or two or three or however many he'll lose. The league will catch up to some extent. But Al, what if Purdy doesn't work out? What if something happens and he's not effective, or you lose a bunch of games in a row and you're trying to save a season with the core that you only have a couple of years window with? Who are you turning to? Or Sam Darnold? What is the backup plan here? And my hope was that would have been Trey, because he's been in the system for 2 years and he has that, to me, unlimited potential that they drafted. Like I still have faith in Trey that he could be a serviceable NFL quarterback somewhere. I don't know if it's here, but at some team will take a chance on him. And I feel like he can produce if he's given a chance, but he has to grow and he needs reps. So it's like I said the last show with Larry, I was like, Trey looked the exact same way to me as he did last time. He looked like a young quarterback who was making mistakes that needs reps, because he hasn't gotten the reps from then until now. So what is the plan if Purdy falters? What are they going to do? Darnold? You're going to pin your hopes on Blaine Gabbert 2.0?
Well, that's kind of what's funny to me. And again, I always think people can get better. I really am of that notion that people can get better, and maybe Darnold can be a serviceable quarterback and just pull the trigger in this offense. Like, serviceable. He does have talent. Maybe he can get better. But what's comical to me is some people seem to have talked themselves into, Sam Darnold could be the answer here. If I told you this time last season, or whatever time at any point in this regime, you know what the missing piece is to this team, the Super Bowl team? Sam Darnold. People would have put me in the loony bin. Are you kidding me? No. What if someone said that, Purdy got hurt? If they had Sam Darnold coming off the bench, they would have won that Super Bowl. Nobody in their right mind would have said that. And now people are like, oh, well, Sam Darnold can step in here and challenge Purdy. It's Sam Darnold. Can he, again, maybe he gets better. I don't know. But right now, what we've seen, give me a break, man. Yeah, if the Niners get Sam Darnold to go against Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow, they're going to be, are you kidding me? And what's funny is, again, I always say, like, I'm not crazy with the social media, but I am on it a lot now because of news and stuff. There is a contingency of people, you always, anytime you post anything about a quarterback, there's somebody coming in about the other quarterback. I did not think Sam Darnold stands, or whatever people call them, exist. They fucking do. There are like a lot of them. Like, he was only with Adam Gase and Matt Rule, and what weapons did he have? Didn't he have McCaffrey and DJ Moore? Didn't he play with those guys? But like, there's people coming up and defending Sam Darnold. Like, you just can't win. You just can't. So if you are a content creator or you do media, and just know anything you post about anything, people are going to come at you with something crazy. There's people coming at me with that Sam Darnold didn't get a fair shake. What? So I don't know with that. The trade thing.
Yeah. Well, this has been the worst training camp that I have had to cover since we started doing this.
Oh, it's awful.
And
I didn't
and
think it
not
could get
because
worse
of
in the
the team.
offseason. It's awful. It's so
It's
bad.
terrible.
The irrational and the things people are doing to practice. I saw Ryan Leaf said something like he was like, I never threw an interception in practice. It was the stupid games that got me. You know what I mean? So when it is, it's like, I just can't. And here's what else I think, Zane. I think week 1, the Niners and the Steelers are going to come out and punch each other in the mouth. I think both of them. And I think you could see Brock Purdy and Kenny Pickett with like 2 picks apiece. I could see it. Maybe the Niners win the game 23-17.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if it happens at all. The Steelers had 20 interceptions last year, and that was were tied with the Niners for the most. And that was without TJ Watt in the field for a lot of the year. So the Steelers have a really good defense. They could come in and give the Niners fits that first week. The Niners are a slow starting team. So what's going to happen then? Is everybody going to go crazy? Probably. But you really got to let a month or so happen. Shanahan's team starts slow. They do. But back to the Trey thing. Here's the other caveat that I think the people who defend Trey, and I'm just being a realist for what I see with Trey. What I saw last week, I thought was shitty for the most part. But again, it doesn't mean he can't get better. Who am I to say that he can't improve? Just from what I've saw so far. But here's another thing that's telling to me. He's clearly available. He's not the starting quarterback. So if a team came to the 49ers and said, hey, man, like, we like this kid. Can we give you a 2 and a 3, or can we give you a 2? They would have jumped all over it. Yeah. Nobody's interested. That's the other thing. So around the NFL, people are not interested in him. And you look for fits. I don't know. Would Atlanta want to give it a shot? He wouldn't get a shot. I mean, Ritter's going to get the shot. If Ritter falters, maybe he comes in. Is that a team? Is Minnesota, if they don't want Cousins next year and they want to see if he can come in and develop for a year? Maybe Tampa, because they're a mess. But Washington probably like Sam Howell more than him, I would think. AFC, I can't really think of anyone off the top of my head. I don't think so. That would want to jump in.
Maybe
and try
the
that.
Texans,
So,
maybe Houston. No,
they got Stroud. Why would you want to bring that in
to
make that? So I don't even think there's a team that would do it in the AFC. There's just not a fit. Nobody's. That's the thing. For as much as you may like Trey Lance, when I say you, I mean whoever's listening to this show, it doesn't seem like the NFL feels that way. It just doesn't. And I thought a lot of the stuff said about him this week was harsh. And you could say he didn't look great. He looked non-functional in this game, but there was some stuff like he doesn't belong in the NFL. I didn't love what Mike Lombardi said about. He said when his mama picked him up from his crib, he doesn't have the instincts. Just stuff like that. I just feel it's harsh, man. You don't have to attack the kid like that. Make your critique. You could say it was really bad, but when you're calling him like he's done, he's a bust, this, that, and the other thing, let it play out a little bit more. You don't know what a 23-year-old is going to be, especially one with who's only had 4 starts. But I don't know, man. It's just been it's always ugly with the quarterbacks with this team. It's crazy.
Yeah, and people are going to hate this. The listeners are going to hate this suggestion. But Al, you know where I think Trey Lance is going to go if he doesn't end up shaking out here? You know where I think he's going to go? No. Well, Miami maybe McDaniel could maybe I'm sure he could make something out of him there. That is one of the best offensive minds in the game. So and I don't think Tua is very good to begin with. So he's made him a serviceable quarterback as well. So which is a fantastic job. Possibly Miami, or you know who else? Seattle.
This has a big
just as an FU to the 49ers. This is a Pete Carroll special, okay? This is one of those things where like Geno Smith, as he resurrected him for 1 year, I think Geno Smith will turn back into a pumpkin this year, but this has Pete Carroll written all over it. If they let go of Trey Lance, I can guarantee you Seattle at least takes a peek. They'll go window shopping on that, because that is how they win. That's how they get their edges, right, on people. Is they take from you and they learn what you do, and they use it against you. So this looks like a Pete Carroll special to me, because that's the type of offense that he likes to run right up there. They like a mobile quarterback. They like somebody who could throw outside of the pocket. So I feel like that would be a place where he could land. Minnesota's the other one. He's from that area. So that looks like a logical fit because of that. I can see him favoring going back. But look, if guys like Rick Meyer and EJ Manuel and Geno Smith, and Rick Meyer was a long time ago, but like guys like that, like Ryan Leaf even got a second shot, right? Like guys like that are really not that great, but just because of the draft status, a team will take a flyer on them. Just because of the draft status. Like Baker Mayfield, same thing, right? He is about done as a starting quarterback in the NFL, right? He's basically at the end of the line as QB1 in this league for his career. He's not even a serviceable quarterback at this point. But because of his draft status, people get excited. When the Niners sign any player, like Cleveland Farrell's a good example, right? So he came in and we were excited about him. Why? Because he's a former first-round pick. Because the talent was there. Somebody recognized that talent. It's just a matter of putting it all together. So somebody will take a chance on Trey. I have no doubt about that. But it's just a matter of who. And look, I think Trey is very much a victim of circumstances here, because a lot of stuff had to happen for all of this to transpire, right? The decision of the franchise to continuously start Jimmy Garoppolo over Trey, the injury to Trey when he first got the start or first started as quarterback, and then the emergence of Brock Purdy, like 3 major things that have totally shifted the whole outcome of this entire scenario. So we can't put it on Trey and be like, oh, he's a bust in this. Like you said, like we don't know, because he hasn't had a chance to really show us what he is. And I'm glad that we asked Larry about practices and what happens there and errors of commission versus omission, because you look at practice stats. And by the way, Brock Purdy in the Thursday practice this week did not throw a pick. Haha. Everybody's ragging on.
He threw 2 almost picks, because we count those 2. So there were 2 almost picks.
But it's just I cannot stress this enough. If you have played a sport at any level, at any point in your life, if you've coached a sport, if you've watched a team practice, if you know anything about your favorite professional athlete's habits off the field, what is practice for? It is to improve your game, improve things that you're not good at, and understand concepts and refine the things that you are good at, which means that if you have an 11-on-11 session and Kyle doesn't want to see Brock Purdy just pull it down and run with it, because that's the easy thing to do. He wants him to execute the play because he wants his offensive line to block and the receivers to run the routes and the defense to cover it properly without Purdy just escaping the pocket in a practice. He's going to have Purdy force it into some windows where he's like not usually going to do that in a game. And people say, oh, you practice how you're going to play. Well, that's not entirely true. Practice habits transfer over to the game. Muscle memory transfers over to the game. But actual plays themselves, there's certain things that happen. Like if you were ever to watch Steph Curry, well, actually Steph Curry is a terrible example because he's awesome in practice. But if you ever watch like Tiger Woods in a practice round, like you watch a little bit of golf, right, Al? You play a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So if you would ever watch like a practice round for Tiger Woods, like go down to Pebble Beach or any one of the beautiful Bay Area courses here and watch the pros play and watch a practice round, watch how many balls they hit. They'll hit a ball from the middle of the fairway and they'll be like, all right, give me another one. All right, they hit the next one in the water, give me another one. Hit the next one in sand, give me another one. They'll hit 4 to 5 shots and only a couple of those will be good. That's the way practice is supposed to be. Is that you try to refine your skill, which means that you will make mistakes, but it's practice and you can make mistakes. You cannot put so much emphasis on practice stats and what they do there, because that is the time to make mistakes. And whether or not those carry over to the game, we'll see. But I'm so tired of people listing out practice stats and be like, oh, well, this completion percentage and that interception and these would be interceptions. Bro, Patrick Mahomes leads the league in interceptable balls year in and year out. Does it matter? Does his team care? No, because he's awesome and they win. I don't care if Brock Purdy throws a game-winning Super Bowl touchdown pass that hits all 11 players on the defense. I don't care as long as our guy ends up with it. It doesn't matter to me. It's not about style points. I don't know when it became about how it looks and the optics of it, Al, but that's one of the reasons why this offseason, this training camp has been so insufferable. It's like, man, just let these guys grow. Let these guys play. Let them actually make mistakes so that they can learn from them when it doesn't count. Because when it does count, they're not going to be able to make those mistakes.
Maybe Allen Iverson was right. We're talking about practice, man.
Exactly. We're talking about practice, man.
We're talking about practice, not even the game. Talking about practice. And it's true, too. You've heard it since the beginning of time in sports. Some guys are good practice players and they'll show up in the game. Some guys are shitty practice players and on Sundays or whatever at tip-off, whatever it is, they have a great game. So yeah, there's too much put on it right now. And everybody wants to give their opinions and be on social media and get attention and everything else. And like, that's fine, I guess. But I think you have to look at things rationally. And to me, I'm not, if we're 4 weeks in the season and he's got 6 picks, meaning Purdy, yeah, I'm gonna be concerned. But right now I'm not. And if he throws a couple in Pittsburgh, like I just said, I'm not. I'm just not. I think he's gonna throw a couple in Pittsburgh. I just think he is. I think the Niners are gonna have a tough time with the Steelers. They're gonna have a really tough time with the Steelers. It's going to be a physical game, and it's going to probably be an ugly game. So if you're listening to this show, get ready for that. And if they win 35-7, you can come back and say, Al, you're wrong. But I don't think so. I think it's going to be like 20-17, 20-13. And I think it's, they're going to have to muck it up a little bit to win that game. So, but, man, I don't know, Zain, we'll see. And go ahead.
Before we get out of here, there's one thing that I wanted to talk about with practice and why it doesn't matter, why preseason doesn't matter for a lot of reasons. You want to know why it doesn't matter? I'll give you some names, and this is exactly why it doesn't matter. Nate Davis, Corey Sheets, Jared Hayne, Lawrence Okoye, Marcus Rush. Remember those guys?
Mm-hmm.
All those guys, preseason studs. Nate Davis made one 60-yard throw in 2010, and everybody was ready to start the guy. He was a late round pick from Ball State, I think, and all he had was the arm. And he was terrible otherwise. And everybody was ready to give him the starting job. Like, number one, so it tells us this fan base has been crazy when it comes to quarterbacks for a long time. Mm-hmm. But the second thing it tells us is that preseason doesn't matter. Preseason is there for a purpose. The teams want to execute certain concepts, certain plays at certain cadences, they want to play at game speed and be able to play opponents so that they can test out things that they wouldn't normally test out, in addition to the actual game plan stuff that they test. Mm-hmm. There are guys in Major League Baseball in spring training that will start a game, starting pitchers, Cy Young Award winners, and this is common across all pitchers, where they will just work on one pitch. They'll say, I'm not going to throw anything but change-ups this entire at-bat to this guy. Or I'm not going to throw a curveball this entire inning because I want to work on my fastball, my changeup, and they may get lit up for 4 or 5 runs in that inning. They don't care because number one, it doesn't count. Number two, they got the work in that they needed. They just need to work on one thing with not live, well, I guess semi-live reps that don't count, and that's what preseason is for. And all the players I mentioned before that I just mentioned to you, they were all great in the preseason, but they did nothing. Some of them didn't make the roster. But the guys that didn't do anything in the regular season because the preseason is not where stars are made. It is the regular season and the playoffs where stars are made. And we need to remember that. So enjoy the last preseason games and let's get ready for week 1. Simple as that.
And stay healthy. And it looks like, based on what Shanahan said later today that I saw anyway, Purdy might play a series or 2 with the starters, maybe, which is good. Yeah. I think he does need to get out there and knock some rust off in a game situation. Hope he does get a couple series in this game, and he certainly needs to play in the 3rd preseason game, I think. Mm-hmm. After Purdy, it looks like Darnold's going to get the bulk of the game, so he may get, if Purdy plays a few series, Darnold may play the rest of the first half, maybe a series or 2 into the second half, I guess, depending on when he gets in. And then it would be Lance. Brandon Allen, I don't know if he practiced today, which is Thursday, but he had been away because he had a baby, so he may not even play this weekend. But it doesn't look like Lance is going to get a whole lot of reps in this game. He only had 3 throws in today's practice. I believe Darnold had 7, and Purdy obviously runs with the first team, so he had many of them. So we'll see how it shakes out. But this Lance story is not going to go away until he gets traded or whatever, he makes the roster, or something happens. But I just thought we had to spend this show, as much as we've been talking about the quarterbacks, it's the story, man, and I just had stuff to say about it, and I hope we did a good job of kind of recapping it and did our own little 30 for 30, I guess. So, but. All right, Zain. We'll see what happens this weekend. We'll see if there's more drama when we pick up again next week. But until then, we'll see you.
Peace.